When I first saw Hostage on your list for this deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I was a little surprised.
Okay.
It wasn't exactly a film that really stuck with me after I saw it,
Mm.
but your analysis, it really digs into this film, and I'm really interested to kind of unpack it all with you today.
I think that's fascinating, right? How a film can kind of, you watch it again and you find new things.
Exactly. So let's jump right into your analysis.
Yeah.
You really zero in on Bruce Willis
Uh,
in this as Jeff Talley. And I don't know about you, but I think a lot of people, when they see Bruce Willis in a movie like this,
right.
they kind of just go, oh, it's another Bruce Willis action movie.
Uh.
But you point out it's so much more than that.
Yeah, and it's understandable to have that knee-jerk reaction, right, looking at his filmography. But
Yeah.
with Hostage, I think the most remarkable thing, and I'm curious to hear your take, but to me, it's the fact that he's vulnerable in this film. Like,
Yeah.
he's actually showing vulnerability, and we don't always get that with him. This is a guy, he's wrestling with some serious trauma, right, from a past case
Right.
where he couldn't save this family, and it's weighing on him. There's this one scene, it's right after the whole hostage situation kicks off, and he's on the phone with the negotiator, and he's trying so hard to stay calm, cool, collected, but you can see in his eyes the panic is bubbling to the surface, almost like he's reliving that past failure.
Right.
It's such a subtle thing, but it's so effective. You really feel that struggle that Tally is going through.
Yeah, you're right. That scene, I mean, it's such a powerful scene,
Mhm.
and especially watching it, rewatching it after reading your analysis,
Yeah,
it really hits hard.
right.
And that kind of leads us into the antagonist in this, Mars Krupchak.
Yes.
And wow, talk about an intense performance from Ben Foster.
Oh, yeah.
Your analysis really called him out as the highlight of this whole film.
And it's true, I mean, a good thriller, it really hinges on how good the villain is.
Right.
And Foster, I mean, he delivers like a masterclass in intensity in this movie. It's incredible. And what makes Mars so compelling as a villain, I think, is that he's so unpredictable.
Right.
Like, you never know what he's going to do next. For example, remember that scene where he just casually sets the house on fire? I mean, it's such a shocking moment in the film, and it really drives home that volatile, dangerous nature that he has. And as a viewer, you're constantly kept on the edge of your seat because you don't know what's coming next.
You almost feel this like terrified fascination with him, right? It's
Yeah.
like you're scared, but you can't help but watch him.
Oh, yeah,
He just, I don't know, he commands every scene he's in.
absolutely. And I think that unpredictability, that's what connects him to some of those other really iconic movie villains.
Yeah.
Think about like Heath Ledger's Joker.
Yeah.
There's that same kind of mesmerizing craziness that just sucks you in. They're terrifying, but you can't look away.
Absolutely. And speaking of creating a mood and an atmosphere, your analysis also really praised the director of this, Florin Emilio Siri,
Yeah.
and
Well-
how he was able to create this incredibly claustrophobic feeling,
Yeah.
despite the fact that most of the film actually takes place in just this one house.
Interesting. Yeah, it's really a testament to the director, how he uses the setting of the film. It's
Mhm.
almost like the house itself becomes like another character,
Oh, interesting.
Like this really oppressive
Mhm.
presence that just bears down on everyone, the characters, the audience. You really start to feel those walls closing in.
Right, right.
And it mirrors what the characters are going through, that sense of being trapped.
It's really like Hitchcock said, right? The more confined the location, the more intense the suspense.
Yeah, exactly. And what I think is interesting about this film is it's not just the hostage situation, right? There's also all this other stuff happening outside the house with those criminals,
Right, right.
And they want something that's inside the house. So it's like this double layer of tension, and Tally's stuck right in the middle of it.
Right. I don't know if you touched on this in your analysis or not, but do you think that actually works, having these two kind of separate things going on?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mixed bag, to be honest. Like, on one hand, I mean, it definitely makes the plot a lot more complicated, right? Tally's got all these different threats that he has to deal with at the same time. But you could also argue that it takes away from the main story,
Yeah.
which is Tally dealing with this trauma from his past
Mm.
and trying to save this family. So it's like it adds something, but it also might take something away.
Yep.
Right.
Right. And speaking of things that might take away from the film, in your analysis, you weren't totally sold on that whole subplot with the DVD and what was it, like the secret information on it or something?
Yeah, the DVD. It's a tough one because it's something you see a lot in these kinds of movies. Like, how do you find that balance between having a plot that's really exciting and keeps you guessing, but also making sure that your characters feel like real people, with their own depth?
Right.
And for me, the DVD thing, yeah, it's definitely intriguing. It adds a little something extra to the plot. But honestly, I don't think it has the same kind of impact as the hostage situation itself. And it kind of pales in comparison to Tally's story and
Mhm.
what he's going through emotionally.
Right. And that actually makes me think of another point that you brought up about the secondary characters and how they don't really get a lot of development.
Yeah,
It's almost like they're just there to move the plot along instead of being like fully fleshed out characters, you know?
absolutely. And it made me think, imagine if we knew more about them, you know? Like their backstories, their motivations. Take the teenage girl who's being held hostage, for example. What if we got to see more of her personality, like how she was dealing with that whole situation?
Right, right.
I think it could have added a really interesting layer to the film emotionally.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder though, like, can a movie be truly great if it focuses more on the plot, you know, and less on developing the characters?
Hmm.
Or do you need both of those things to make a truly memorable film?
It's a question that people have been debating forever. Film critics, audiences, everyone. I mean, look at how many movies are out there, right? And they all do things differently. Some movies, they just want to blow your mind with the plot twists and turns. And then others, they really want you to connect with the characters on a deep level, you know?
So where do you think, like, based on your analysis, where does Hostage fall on that spectrum? You say it's a perfect film.
Perfect. I don't know about perfect. It's got its flaws, for sure. But what I liked about your analysis and what we were talking about is that it's a really interesting mix of stuff. You've got action, suspense, and then these really strong performances, especially from Willis and Foster. So maybe not a masterpiece, but definitely a solid thriller.
Okay, so for our listener out there who's maybe thinking about giving this one a watch or a rewatch, what would you say? Is it worth their time?
I think so, yeah. Especially now, right? Knowing what we know about Willis's performance and how Foster just disappears into that villain role, it really makes you see those actors in a whole new light and appreciate how much they brought to a film that honestly could have been just another forgettable action flick.
Yeah, it's that classic saying, right? Don't judge a book by its cover. Or in this case, don't judge a movie by, I don't know, its initial release or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so cool about doing this kind of deep dive, taking a closer look, going beyond just those surface level impressions. Because sometimes you find these hidden gems, these really interesting pieces of filmmaking.
Exactly. So to wrap things up for our listeners, it sounds like Hostage. It's not perfect. It's got its flaws. But you're saying it's still a really gripping thriller with some really great acting.
Definitely, yeah. And like we were talking about, when you know what to pay attention to, those little details, the director's choices, it adds a whole other level to the experience.
Totally. Yeah, it's like you've given us a whole new way to watch the film.
I hope so.
You've convinced me. I'm adding it to my watch list.
Awesome. Maybe we should do a rewatch party, compare notes after.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, if you decide to check out Hostage, let us know what you think. We love hearing your take on these deep dives. Until next time, happy watching, everyone.